It's February 22nd, 2021. This is Roqe. He's like a Persian superstar dream kid, an acclaimed doctor and engineer with all the educational boxes checked off. But Dr. Abbas Ardehali is a lot more than his occupation. He's an Iranian-American who's the first surgeon in the United States to perform a breathing lung transplant, a new procedure and possibility that he helped invent. He is the award-winning surgical director of UCLA's Heart-Lung Transplant programs and a professor of surgery and medicine at the UCLA School of Medicine. Dr. Abbas Ardehali joins us for a feature interview today, plus Mona from Melbourne with your Persian Proverb of the Week, and we have your letters. This is Conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. I'm Jianghomeshi. This is Roqe. Hi there, welcome to episode number 87 of Roqe, coming to you from snowy Canada and envying those of you in warm places listening around the world. Khosh amadid, welcome, durud. امیدوار هستم که میزون هستین. We are on an ongoing mission to build a new audio-visual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity, coming to you on SoundCloud, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, that's iTunes, Instagram, YouTube, Castbox, and Telegram. Hello, fabulous Jian.
Hi, Jian.
Hello.
How are you?
Thank you.
Sup?
Thank you. Sup. Hello, Groovy Shaya.
Hi, Jian.
Hello. And hello, Captain Reza.
Hello, sir.
Hello, sir. Listen, our featured guest today is just so impressive. He is one of those folks that we should, I think we should be really proud of in our diaspora. Dr. Abbas Ardehali. He's the surgical director of UCLA's Heart-Lung Transplant programs. So heart, lung, and heart-lung.
The lungs weren't enough?
Well, you have to say it twice. He's so impressive. He's the man who was behind the invention of the breathing lung and heart transplant. He was also the first surgeon in the United States to perform a breathing lung transplant. Do you know what that means, Jian?
I have an idea. It's like to get a lung breathing essentially before you transplant it into a body. Is that what
yes,
you mean?
Well done,
yes,
Jian.
yes, thank you.
But why is that different? What is that? Do you know why that's different?
It's functioning. How do we...
Right. So traditionally, when they want to, I'm talking as if I'm an authority.
You're a
I just
doctor
learned
now.
this because I was researching him, right? But traditionally, they transplant hearts and lungs, which is only a practice of the last 40 years or something anyway. But they take a lung or they take a heart out of someone's body and then they put it on ice. And then it only lasts so long, and then they put it in the other body. He's created this, or helped create this technology. He was the first surgeon to do the transplant, that they take the lung or the heart and they keep it, they put it in a device so that it's still pumping, it's still working, and then they put it into somebody's body, or the transplant. I don't know what the language is, but I think the reason why that's important is because, first of all, they can mend it, they can make it better even before they put it in, and second of all, it can last longer. Like it can only last so long on ice, but they can transport it around the world, or so it's very impressive.
Wow, it's incredible. Yeah. Of course, in Iran.
I don't think I need to interview him anymore. I think I've done a good enough job of explaining. I might as well be the surgeon.
Yeah,
let's face it.
Follow-up questions.
Would you like to know how we do the procedures?
Well, that's Roqe. That's a show.
That's great.
No,
I'm already so impressed.
I kid, of course, and I will kid with him about the fact that he's putting us all to shame. I can only imagine already. Like I've been dreading my mother listening to this show, because she won't say you are a failure, my son, but she'll say, "Oh, un doctor. Maybe he was a doctor and an engineer." Just kind of look at me, and I'll be like, "Yeah, I know.
I can already
I'm not
feel
either
myself.
of those things. Yeah.
I can already feel myself becoming one of those mothers, like telling my kids, "You better become a doctor."
Well, does your
partner.
significant other. Does your partner, who is a doctor, know of Dr.
Yes,
yeah.
he does. I believe all medical professionals probably.
I would think he's
an Iranian doctor, so of course he's heard of him and has a huge respect for him.
Yeah.
I do not. This is the first time hearing about him.
You've never heard of him?
I've never heard of him, which
Right.
is a shame.
Then how do you know if your doctor partner's heard of him?
I've spoken to him, and
you said his name.
He's heard of
Right.
him, yes.
Do you want me to explain the breathing lung transplant again?
One more time for the cheap
I
seats.
really like that, eh? Oh, man.
No, well, I've just been reading. I've been obsessed with it. I mean, I'm going to ask him to explain it better, but it blows my mind. It blows my mind that he took the initiative to it's not enough to be saving lives and to be the surgeon and be the professor and be all the things he is, but that he takes the initiative to think of new ways to better our world. I think about that, and then I look at you, Captain Reza, and think, why did some of us fail so badly?
He adds value into my life, Jian. I'm trying to think of something, but
Captain Reza?
Yes.
Wow,
Yeah,
he's-
well,
He
I'm
makes-
your punching bag. You get
Yeah, exactly.
release
He
your
makes it easy to
anxiety.
make fun of.
Listen, if you're ever lost at sea, he's a
hey,
captain. He can
that's
take
right,
you.
that's
He can.
right.
He's a Marine. I don't know.
Maybe I make a documentary about Mr. Ardehali's
Oh,
life. I
yeah,
think,
there
hey,
you go.
That's right,
I'll
a
be contributing
filmmaker. See?
somehow.
Actually, I'm going to make this point to him too, but we joke. But I think to be a successful community, we need more than just doctors and
100%.
engineers. We need somebody to make the film like
Yes.
you, Captain
Yes.
Reza.
Thank you.
Anyway, we'll talk to him, and I'm looking forward to that. We've launched our patrons page.
Yes.
This is very exciting for us. roqemedia.com. So we've been saying to you guys out there, if you like our content, if you appreciate the show, if you think it's good, or you really are grateful it exists, it's the first thing of its kind in English around the world, talking about Iranian diaspora identity. You can support us and keep our content as ad-free, as commercial-free as possible by becoming a patron. And you do so by going to the website and pressing the red button that says support us, Keon.
It can
Doesn't
be
say
as-
Keon.
It doesn't
It
say
says
Keon,
support
no.
us, although we could
Yes.
add that. Support
It
us,
doesn't
Keon.
go to me. Let's be very clear. It can be as little as $5. Can be as limitless.
That's
really,
right.
whatever you
That's
feel.
right. It can be as little as $5 and as much as $6. No, 10, 25. Our Rockstar status is $50 a month, and Hero at $100. Any contribution really helps us. And there's Roqe merchandise.
Yeah, that's cute. Actually, I watched them on the Roqe story, and that's really cute.
You know what's weird is we have this Roqe merchandise, but we don't have it here. Like I want to get the hoodie looks so cool.
Yeah.
I don't have it. I want to get one.
Yeah.
So I guess I have to become a patron.
Yourself.
I like the Mizun Bashin one.
There's a T-shirt that says
Yes.
Mizun
I
Bashin,
yeah.
and the bracelet I have. I love the bracelet.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that we have these Roqe face masks, for the COVID era. That I think, even if you just become a BFF, we're going to send you one. We'll send Roqe merchandise to any patrons, and Savvy Roham is creating them. Our own Savvy,
No way.
yeah, he's
Wow.
creating these because that's his little sideline. Savvy Roham's got he's got
got some talent.
He's got his hand in a few different things. So
Very cool.
yeah, and so if you become a patron, you are welcome to all of those things. roqemedia.com.
Roqemedia.com.
I have my water in front of me because Keon, I've never seen a species of person who consumes as much liquid, as much water as Keon. It started by she would bring like one of those gym bottles and drink water in the studio. Now she's got like a team of people carrying in like barrels of water. Like, what is this thing?
I call this my water bucket.
It's huge. Is this just for today?
It's for a full day.
This is like a month's worth
Maybe
of...
the doctor will tell you.
I
you
will
need
ask the
water.
doctor.
You
Well,
need this much water a day, by the way.
But this much water...
It's how much...
Do
Do you know how much I talk during the day? I need to replenish my system with all this.
Shai, do you think it's safe to drink this much water?
I know that it's good to drink as much as you can, but
Yeah.
that amount of water...
You know what? I'll get
I've never
you
seen
one.
this much water.
And it's
I'm going to get you one,
evolving.
Jian.
No, actually, I should drink more water, but I've just never... I mean, to basically for those of you, there's those water coolers that you have in
Yes,
a office space. That's what Keon carries around with her and just chugs the whole thing.
I'm too lazy to keep going back and forth to get water. So this way, I just have it
you always
readily
have it.
available next to me. It's like my best friend.
Way to go. Captain Reza. Oh, we have Mona from Melbourne coming up with the Persian Proverb of the week. And we're going to get to letters. I think we've got some good letters about Mustafa Heravi.
Of course.
Your fave rave guy there. We'll get to that. Fabulous Keon, Groovy Shaya, Captain Reza. Stick around. Here we go. My featured guest today is an outstanding Iranian-American surgeon who developed the first cardiopulmonary resuscitation device in physiological conditions outside the human body. He also performed the first successful heart-lung transplant at UCLA, and he has been the first surgeon in the United States to perform a breathing lung transplant. Dr. Abbas Ardehali was born in Tehran, moved to the United States at the age of 16, and since then, he's not exactly been a slacker. He's now the surgical director of UCLA's Heart-Lung and Heart-Lung Transplant programs, the William E. Connor Chair in Cardiothoracic Transplantation, a professor of surgery and medicine at the UCLA School of Medicine, and was also the principal investigator behind technology that allows for the transportation of a breathing human heart or lung for an extended period of time. Professor Ardehali has received a number of awards, including a Best Doctor in America distinction for the years 2007 to 2016, the Breath of Life Innovation Award from the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation in 2013, the Ellis Island Medal of Honor by the National Ethnic Coalition of Organizations in 2017, and the Los Angeles Magazine Top Doctors Award for 2018. And with all of this, he's also a champion of the Persian community in the diaspora and committed to helping spread a positive image of Iranian culture. And right now, Dr. Abbas Ardehali joins me from Los Angeles today. Hello, sir.
Well, good afternoon to you, and it's a pleasure to be on the Roqe conversation with you today.
It's great to talk to you again. I'm afraid I have to start on a note of disappointment with you because, life is hard enough for those of us who have failed our Persian parents by not becoming a doctor or engineer. But you are an acclaimed doctor and engineer, and it really isn't helping the rest of us.
Well, I can tell you that as I was being brought up, just like all of us, the importance of education was of paramount importance to us and our family. And as you mentioned, I did not slack off much, and I have done my share of obtaining degrees and pushing through with my educational process.
I love that you're not you're unapologetic about it. It's like man mohandas doctor. What did you do? Let me actually, for the record, let's get it out of the way. Let me just read this. You completed your fellowship in cardiothoracic surgery at UCLA, your internal medicine residency at UC San Francisco, a master's degree in public health at UC Berkeley, a medical degree at Emory University School of Medicine, both a master's degree in chemical and biochemical engineering and an undergraduate degree in biology and biochemistry from Rutgers University. I'm sure that's not even the complete list, right? Should I keep going?
No, well, I think that pretty much sums it up, but I never thought of it as you bring it up, and I appreciate the acknowledgement that you have brought up with recognition of all of these degrees.
Well, all joking aside, we're incredibly proud of you. I mean, you're sort of a symbol for the community to look at. Have you always been an overachiever?
Well, I have had my shares of areas where I have not disappointed my family, but I think that this is education has been an area of strength for me and our family, and I have obviously been blessed to have the ability to perform well in schools and have the good fortune of being able to educate and be able to finish the educational process.
By the way, reading that long list of awards, there didn't seem to be one for 2020. So, Abbas John, I guess you really were slacking off this past year. I'm really deeply disappointed in no award for 2020.
That's okay. I can live one without. And 2020 has been an incredibly unique year, as we all know. And I have to tell you that I'm pleased to see there is light at the end of the tunnel. 2021 is promising to be a better year for all of us. I think that the vaccine holds promise. given the current pandemic. I just hope that not only everyone in the Western world, but also everyone in the sphere in the world is capable of getting a robust vaccine against this virus in the near future so that we can all put this behind us.
Well, listen, I want to get to your story, and I want to ask you about your observations on changes in the Iranian diaspora and the Persian community in the years you've been in America, because you would have an interesting view on this because you've actually been out of Iran for 4 decades or so. Let me ask you first about being at the forefront of medical breakthroughs and the work you do in terms of medicine, what you were just talking about. Let's start there. It's only been in the last decade that you have presided over the first breathing lung transplant. Now, I didn't know what that was. I've done my best to get up to speed on it, learning about it. I mean, this is quite incredible. Can you, for our audience in a very simple way, describe what a breathing lung transplant is?
Sure. As you know, the first human heart transplant was performed in South Africa by a physician called Christian Barnard. Some of us may have recollection of that event. Over the past 50 years or so, for us to do any organ transplant, be it either the heart or the lung or the liver, what we do is that we stop the organ in the donor's body and put it on ice, and then bring it to the recipient hospital where the recipient is located, and then we perform surgery.
Right.
Naturally, keeping a human organ on ice is never meant to be physiologic, and as such, it leads to slow damage of the organ, such that we have a limited time span where we can transfer organs from one hospital to the recipient hospital, or taking it out of the donor body before we reestablish blood flow in the recipient body.
Right.
For hearts, it's in the order of about 4 to 6 hours. For the liver, it may be a little bit longer. For the lung, it's about 6 hours or so. And as a result, we are
Sorry,
not
what
able
is
to
6
share-
hours? The thawing of it, or the I mean, what is 6 hours? The window that you have before it somehow gets damaged?
Correct. It's the safe preservation period.
Okay.
In other words, given the current technology and what we have been doing for the past 50 years, we cannot keep a human organ outside of a human body on ice for more than 6 hours. So if we have a donor in Florida, we would not be able to share it with a patient in California.
Okay, so it's not sitting on ice for weeks. It's a very short process, even if it is on ice.
It's a finite process until the organ gets injured and is no longer used or usable. So we have to fight against this time, and we do everything we can so that this time is not exceeded, such that we do this procedure in the middle of the night, or we do this on an emergency basis, or we send helicopter or airplanes to transport organs between one center to the other center.
Right.
But most importantly, we know that we have this finite time period beyond which we cannot safely keep human organs outside of the human body.
Right.
So this is something that has intrigued the minds of many of the transplant pioneers and the specialists for many decades. What if we could take some of the donor blood and just pass it through the organ and pretend that the organ is in the donor's body, being perfused with the donor blood. And in the case of the heart is still beating while the blood is circulating through it. In the case of the lung, the blood is circulating through the lung, and we are breathing the lung as well. Air goes in and out, blood goes through the lung and through the heart, and the heart and the lung maintains a near physiologic state, near normal state. As far as that organ is concerned, it feels like it is still inside that donor chest.
Right.
The challenge for us has been to develop this technology
Wait a
and
second.
proved
One step back. I'm treat me like I'm in grade 5 here. So that is fascinating. Creating this avatar, creating this proxy for a human body with which to keep the lung, the blood flowing, etc. Let's say you were able to do that. You have been able to now, but in terms of this intriguing people, what would be the advantage of that?
Well, the advantage of that are twofold. One is that the organ that we can transplant, even in 4 or 5 hours, it will be a better organ for the recipient because it has not been subjected to ice. It's been warm.
So there is some deterioration when you put the organ on ice.
Exactly. It is gradual, but it starts at time zero. A human heart is never meant to be on ice.
What's the second advantage?
The second advantage is that we can potentially keep organs alive outside of the human body for longer than 6 hours. And we can share organs between Canada and the United States, or between the United States and Europe. And an additional advantage of it is that we can potentially repair the damages or improve that organ to be transplanted. Assume that, for example, a lung has a pneumonia in it. If we put it on the machine and we add large doses of antibiotics and give it 24 hours, we can potentially cure that lung of the pneumonia before we transplant it.
Wow.
Or the heart that has some bruising of the muscle. If we put it on the machine and let it repair itself, we give it some medications or some new genes that make it a better organ, because the heart is now being metabolized and it's warm, it's perfused, so it can repair itself.
So you're speaking now as if this is theoretical, but you've actualized this, right? You have now done this.
That is the sort of thing that we are potentially looking at in the years to come. Have we placed an organ on this machine and made it better before transplant? Yes. Have we placed an organ on this machine and make it a markedly improved, different organ that is much more resistant to damages? Not yet. Will it happen? We think so. We are optimistic that this is, as you correctly pointed out, is a bioreactor for human organs so that we can make them better organs for transplantation.
So this is probably a superficial analysis, but on the face of it, I'm guessing that keeping a lung alive, creating a breathing lung, is a lot more costly than putting it on ice. So this isn't something that's going to be accessible or available to the average Joe or Reza in the interim, right?
Correct. It obviously is going to require additional costs and additional labor and resources, yet the potential to the larger community can be remarkable, because we can now replace organs for humans for any condition that they have a damaged organ, and replace it with a near perfect organ.
Wow.
So that they are more likely to have enduring life with intact organ function.
So I'm fascinated by the science of this and this discovery and this what you've created, but I'm also fascinated by your role in this and your interest in it. I mean, tell me about the intersection of Abbas being an inventor and also wanting to help people. Is working on a new discovery like this, like say ways of administering transplants, the perfect marriage of being that engineer and surgeon?
I think that having been the fortunate person to be at the forefront of the field of solid organ transplantation at UCLA, and being able to be engaged with this technology at the very early stages, gave me an opportunity to have a wonderful position to lead and guide this technology in the early stages of development. I was involved in the design of the product, as well as in the early investigations in humans and and beyond. And I was the principal investigator for the what we call this device, organ care system, OCS, for the OCS in the heart as well as in the lungs. And I think that this technology is not only exciting and potentially transformative in the field of transplantation, but it is incredibly gratifying to be able to have a meaningful impact in future lives. The ability to be able to offer life-saving therapy to patients with end-stage organ diseases in the years to come.
But you have a meaningful impact by just doing the transplants themselves, the way they've, with the existing technology. I mean, there's something about you that seeks to go deeper, to want to actually be at the forefront of discovering even newer and better ways of doing this. Where do you think that comes from in you?
Right, Jian. I think what's notable is the fact that when I do a transplant, I impact one person and one family's lives. Whereas if you do research, if you innovate, if you are pioneer, you actually may impact many hundreds and thousands of lives in the years to come. And that difference is something that if you ask any innovator or pioneer in the field, is what drives them to do the work and get up every morning to persevere, despite the chances of success being relatively low. And I think that is the driving force behind my interest in not only help a patient one at a time, but try to innovate such that in generations to come, they can derive the benefit of this technology and what has been done so far.
What about the instinct to help people at all? I mean, I'm curious where that comes from. I mean, take us back. Your family, if I'm doing the math right, you would have left Iran before the revolution, much like my parents did before I was born. Unlike me, you were alive. You lived in Iran until you were 16. Then you came west. What do you remember from those days in Iran? How do you characterize your time as a child in Iran? Did you have this instinct to want to help?
Well, I look very nostalgically on my short time that I had in Iran. I left Iran when I was 16, but I can tell you that those 16 years probably had more impact on my life and my personality and on who I am, a lot more than the other 2/3 of my life. As you well know, it is part of any Iranian culture, family, and history is to do everything for their children and advocate for their children to educate themselves and better themselves. I was no exception of that, and I was fortunate enough to be born and raised in a family where education is valued highly, hard work and commitment is strongly believed in, and most importantly, being kind and compassionate is considered to be part of who we are. I think that sometimes we look at the Iranian culture, especially for those who have a fairly narrow view of Iran and the Middle East and what they hear, given what the current climate is, and do not quite understand the human values that the Iranian culture, Iranian family respects and honors.
Right.
And I personally believe that my life, my 16 years of life in Iran, have without a doubt impacted who I am today and what I have done.
Yes. How specifically so? I mean, would it have been obvious to anyone meeting Abbas as a 10-year-old kid that you were destined to be a world-renowned surgeon?
Well, I think that part of it was our family values. I think part of it was my robust and strong education that I received for the first 16 years when I was in Iran, because my foundation was built so strong because of what Iran's educational system was at the time.
You were in Tehran, yes?
In Tehran.
So we're talking about the 70s in Tehran?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. In one of the high schools there. And I didn't go to Alborz, but I went to one of the better high schools. And I think that with that foundation, with the belief that education and helping other human beings is of paramount importance in anyone's life, I think that I was equipped with what is absolutely necessary to succeed in a rigorous society like the U.S. and in an academic environment.
Clearly.
That we have.
Yeah. Did you know as a teenager that these are the kind of fields that you want to go into, that medicine might be the one?
Well, I still vividly remember I was about 8 or 9 years old when I was watching the news when the first human heart transplant was performed. And for some reason, maybe I'm just thinking about it, but I still remember in a black and white TV that they were reporting, I think at about 8 p.m. news, that the first human heart transplant was performed in South Africa. And I think a bulb went on in my head. And then I think that the values that my mother and my father instilled in me made me think that between all the professions out there, not that all of them are noble, no question about that, but what would be more gratifying than if you can actually do something that can directly help others? And I do not say that by thinking that other professions are not noble, because every single one of us carry a load in making human lives better, and one at a time. However, I think that I'm fortunate, I'm blessed to be in a position to be able to directly see how my education, my hard work, and my perseverance can translate into improvement in the quality of lives for a human being.
Abbas, why did your family leave Iran?
Well, my father had received his PhD in economics from the U.S. and went back to Iran as part of the Marshall Plan, and lived there, and married my mom, and I have 5 siblings, and we came one at a time at around right before revolution and before high school, most of us. But my family, my mom and my mother and father, were very much tied to Iran and Iranian values, and they never wanted to fully emigrate. So my parents unfortunately passed away about 6 or 7 years ago. Yet they continued, and they loved the Iran and what Iran stands for, the culture, the human beings there, and they wanted to reside there. They obviously used to come here quite frequently, given their children and their grandchildren, but they never picked up residence in the U.S. despite the many reasons for their attachment to this country as well.
They must have been very proud of you.
Well, I am more proud of them. I think that everything that I have is owed to them. I consider myself the most fortunate to have been raised in that family and also in that culture. So I think it's the combination and the interfacing of the family values, the human values, and the cultural values that have made me who I am. And I think that I consider myself incredibly blessed to have been the recipient of everything that everyone has done for me up to now.
You know, part of the imperative of this show is to tell our stories in an attempt to, once we have this tapestry of stories, to really forge what our identity is outside, being of Iranian descent, but living outside of Iran and being part of new nationalities, American, Canadian, etc. What was it like for you coming to America as an Iranian teen in the 70s?
Well, I can tell you that it was quite challenging, exciting, mixed feelings, uncertainties. When I came to the US, it was before the revolution. Everyone here had a different image of the Iranians and the Iranian students. Within 2 or 3 years, with the revolution and the hostage taking,
Right.
things turned upside down. A lot of us who had come here with the intention of getting an education and going back and contributing to our own homeland, that intention, that vision turned upside down. I actually was applying to medical school right after the hostage taking. And I still vividly remember that my GPA was higher, my record was much better, and I interviewed at one of the most renowned medical schools in Southeast. I would not mention the name. And my interviewer turned around and asked me, "So when are you going to release our hostages?"
Wow.
I think that sentence sums up the degree of challenge that we all, those of us who are in the United States at that time, faced. That we were the face of the hostage takers for the America. And that was a challenging times for all of us. And for the past 40 some years, we have all worked and done our best, to the best that our abilities allow, to fabricate a positive image for the Iranian diaspora, for individuals of Iranian descent. I think you are a good example. And when I listen to some of your conversations on the website, you have a wide variety of who we are.
Yes.
And I commend you for your effort to try to create this fabric of what the real Iranian diaspora is. But the facts are that we were dealt a hand because of the political upheaval. And this group of immigrants have done the best they can. And I am proud to say, after 40 some years, that we are amongst the most educated, the most contributing members of any community that we have taken part with.
But we also, as a community, have our scars.
Right.
There's no one I've interviewed on this program. I mean, sometimes people say, "Why do you keep talking about the revolution? Why do you keep talking about?" Because it comes up. I mean, no one's family story can elude the difficulties that have existed, in the last few decades for Iranians, even outside of any sort of partisan political talk or something like that. Just in terms of the realities of what of the upheaval of a culture of a nation state, literally, and then the manifestations of how that plays out over the years for people in the diaspora. With respect to those scars, you tell the story. I mean, you've got this amazing doctor's tone, which is very, very effective, when you have to deliver difficult information, I would imagine. But, saying something like that in the calm tone that you say it does perhaps betrays how difficult it must have been at the time. I mean, this is outrageous that you're a top student, and that and you're a kid, and that somebody is who has the power and influence to be able to get you into their program would say, "When are you going to release our hostages?" What does that do to your psyche? How did you work through that?
Yeah, well, I think that it's incredibly discouraging because many of us look at those positions of authority with so much awe that we think that they know what the correct answers are, and they know what the real issues are. But the fact is that they are also have a narrowed view on many things. But the fact is that this revolution impacted all of us, directly or indirectly. And I do not mean to say anything political, but the change in the political structure in Iran have influenced all of us in one way or the other. And I believe that in face of enmity and adverse situation, we as a community always rise up and try to make the best of it. And I think that I know of many individuals under these circumstances with similar stories like myself who have made the best of what they have. And I think it speaks to the resilience of our community, the values we hold dear
Sure.
as Iranians, and the upbringing that we have had. And I remain quite optimistic about our first generation in diaspora, my kids, your cousins or others who were born, or yourself even. Right. I think the prototyping or stereotyping is going to go away, that everybody should become an engineer or a doctor. I think that now we're beginning to realize how important it is. That's true, yeah. How important it is to be a lawyer, to be a politically active, or to be a community activist.
Sure. At the end of the day, we need a diverse community. We can't, it doesn't, as great as it is to have doctors and engineers, it doesn't serve us to only have doctors and engineers. We need people in all professions to really, and we need to integrate. We need to really not. I mean, I know the Los Angeles Iranian community has been there for a long time, but there's other places in the world, and Toronto would be one of them, where the immigrant, the Iranian community is a lot newer here for the most part. Not my family, and there's an insular quality sometimes with this community. Let's come and let's sort of squat here and just talk to each other and not integrate into the broader community. And that's always been an issue for me in terms of exercising our social and economic and cultural and political clout as a community as we grow in numbers.
Exactly, and I think that what you are doing, Jian, with this podcast is a good example of what we need to do as a larger community. We cannot, as you said, we can all be doctors or engineers and be very successful, but I think that a broad-based community needs more than just that. And the fact that I see that more and more on the next generation, people who are involved in politics, who are running for offices, who are community activists, who bring recognition to the community. This is what we need to do as a larger society. We need to have representation at the table where the decisions are being made.
We went through that list of all the schools you went to in terms of your education, your amazing education in the U.S., UC San Francisco, UC Berkeley, the Emory University School of Medicine, Rutgers for your master's and your undergrad. So during that time you're in the States, was it always a foregone conclusion at that point that you were going to stay in America, or did you entertain the idea of going back to Iran, even post-revolution?
Well, I've always envisioned that when I came here, my plans were, and my family's plans were, that we would educate here and we would go back, just like my father did. Yet the dynamics changed. I actually have gone back on multiple occasions to give lectures and talks. However, I have never envisioned moving back because of the variety of reasons. I think that I wish there was an opportunity for many of us to go back and give back to our ancestors and the families that we were part of. However, it has not happened. But what I try to have done is to, number one, I have many visitors from the Iranian universities and medical centers who are interested in this field, and we welcome them to UCLA, and they spend from weeks to months in here with us, and we try to help them with that. I've also gone back on multiple occasions to give lectures at the medical meetings, and believe it or not, I've actually done transplants in Iran, in Tehran. So although a small part, But I do think that an integral component of a fruitful life is to give back. And I can't think of anything more deserving than to give back to the individual Iranian families who are in need right now. I wish we could do more, but as all of us, I'm still optimistic that things will get better. The political climate will improve such that we can exchange in all fields between the Western world and Iran.
Well, you're in Los Angeles, which of course is long identified as one of the epicenters of Iranians who live in the diaspora, and you would, whether you like it or not, be considered one of the captains of our community, and just in terms of your prominence and what you've accomplished. You've also been there for a while. How would you characterize the way you've seen the Iranian community change or evolve over the years?
A very interesting question, because the one thing I can tell you is that there is no one answer to this question. Obviously, it's a very heterogeneous population that reside in Southern California. And as time has changed, or as time has gone by, the vision, the impressions of this community has also changed. I think that compared to 30, 40 years ago, when many people were hoping to go back, everybody is now determined that this is where their lives will be. The first generations are still in the shock state or recovering after that this is where they and their families will reside. The second generation, or the first generation that were born in the States, are very much diverse, and they have really interfaced with the American communities in a seamless way. They have become part of the fabric of Southern California, and they sometimes you can't even tell that their parents are Iranians. Mm-hmm. A reflection of that is something we just talked about, their engagement in a variety of fields and pushing the envelope just like any other immigrant community to integrate fully in their new home. I think that one of the things that we as a group are recognizing is the importance of being engaged in our political system so that our voices are heard when decisions are being made. As Iranians, we have been somewhat reluctant to get engaged in the political system, but I think that in any democracy, this is of critical importance to participate. Otherwise,
although of course our community is quite balkanized even within that.
Correct.
Or even more so, once we get into the politics of the West. You would know that sitting in Los Angeles after the last election, right?
Very much so, very much so. And everything that has transpired in the past few years is a reflection that unless we all get engaged, anything is possible. In response to your question, how the diaspora in Southern California has changed, I think that the one thing for sure is that the Iranian diaspora remains very successful in terms of the education, in terms of investment, in terms of assets, in terms of their political clout. And we are slowly transitioning to a integrated part of an immigrant community where our children becomes part of the fabric. We are involved in the political system. We are a force to reckon with, not only in terms of the education or in terms of value, in terms of philanthropy, in terms of support, in terms of other factors that is integral to the success of any communities. I remain quite optimistic about what the future holds.
You've said that. You've said you're quite optimistic. How would you answer this question if I said, what is the greatest barrier to success for Iranians in the diaspora, either on a personal level or as a community?
I would say coming together. We as a group need to unite our forces. I know for Iranians or for many groups in the Middle East, coming together is a difficult proposition. But I do think that we need to develop some organization in our community that have a voice, help them, support them in meaningful, impactful ways, and have them advocate for us as a community of great attributes and great strength.
You know, you said something earlier that I jotted down, and I want to drill down a little bit on, because I'm sure that you're not somebody who says things that you don't mean. You use specific words, and so normally I would ask you how you self-identify. I mean, you've talked about that. You've talked about, obviously you live in the States. I'm sure that on some levels you're a proud American there as well, but that you really, those first 16 years really impacted you, your parents. You really have this Iranian pride. And you said we have three things that sort of in our DNA, so to speak, metaphorically, of course, I'm talking to a doctor. You said, family values, human values, and cultural values. I think the family values part I get, and I think most people would understand who know Iranians or who are Iranian. What do you mean by human values?
The drive in all of us to go out of our way to help another help needing hand. I think that we have a intrinsic part of our culture and nature to go out of the way and help others at the time of need. And I have seen that firsthand still in the Iranian culture the few times that I've gone back. I see how a community comes together to help another person in Iran, in Tehran, in our families, and when somebody has a challenge facing them. But I think that that human value of helping others at the time of need is something that, as we mentioned before, is part of what has driven me to pick this profession, and has formulated my my trajectory. I think that human values that are ingrained in our culture, and I think that has been a wonderful part of us, which I hope will remain strong and will never fade away, because we have faced many challenges in the past decades that could easily dissuade you from these values that you hold.
It's a good pleasure to talk to you. I have really enjoyed this. Let me come back to your profession that you just spoke of and what you chose based on those human values. Again, it's always a challenge with a program like this. It's a variety program. Our audience is not made up of doctors necessarily, although there are many in the Iranian community and listening around the world. For most of us, our education around top-level surgeons has come from TV shows and movies. So I have my Grey's Anatomy version of what you do, but what is the most challenging part of what you do from a medical standpoint?
I think the most challenging part is when you cannot help a needy person or a person that would not have any other options without you. I think that the most difficult part of my professional career is when I lose a patient. And I wish there was a way that I could say that I would have 100% success, but it doesn't happen. It's 99 point some percent. And when you are dealing with that patient or their family, it challenges you to your core to be able to be comforting to them while maintaining your own composure. Even though I've been doing this for more than 20 years, it still continues to challenge me every time that I lose a patient or every time that there is a situation where I have to comfort the family members.
Yeah, I can only imagine what you having to do that is like. Has COVID been a nightmare for you?
Well, COVID has been a challenge for everyone. I was fortunate to be at the in a position to be able to dictate how we accept human organs during the COVID pandemic, and I'm very proud to say that last year we did the largest number of heart and lung transplants in the history of UCLA and on the West Coast, and we did not have a single case of transmission of COVID. We have transplanted patients who have had COVID before with good outcomes.
Wow.
And
sorry.
I think
Meaning that you had to ensure that the organs had not been infected with COVID? Is that what you mean?
Right. So two things. Number one is that we had to make sure that organs came from donors that were COVID negative.
Right.
And you can imagine that some of these brain dead donors are in the ICUs, and right next to them, there are multiple COVID positive patients. So it really tested the organ donation in the United States or across the world. How can you be sure that that donor that you are taking the organ from is not exposed to a COVID virus in an ICU where COVID is rampant? We instituted some policies to ensure that how we test for COVID and when we test for COVID to minimize the risk to the recipient. In addition, we had to test the recipients to make sure that nobody's going into surgery when they have the COVID virus exposed to them. So we had both fronts that we needed to test. And I'm fortunate and I'm proud to say that despite the largest number that we've done in the history of UCLA and the West Coast, we did not have a case of transmission from a donor to the recipient.
That was just parenthetically. I'm thinking about the fact that back in, it would be April or May, we did an interview with Dr. Arshid Azarine, who works on heart matters in cardiovascular radiology in Paris. And he was saying at the time something that was quite alarming to him was that he felt, or that they were discovering that COVID puts extra pressure on the heart and that it imperils people's hearts somehow. I know that what COVID has been transforming over the year, and we keep hearing different things, but I can't think of a better person to ask this of. Is there some correlation between COVID and the heart, and is it something to be concerned about for those who have had COVID?
There is a correlation. However, the correlation is not very strong. In other words, the individuals who have had COVID infection, unless they develop specific symptoms, they do not have to worry about damages to the heart. COVID does cause heart failure. In fact, about a month and a half ago, I transplanted a 22-year-old person in Los Angeles who had developed COVID about 3 months before.
Wow.
And the COVID had impacted his heart, and he developed end-stage heart failure. So his lungs were recovered, but his heart was not. So he was on a machine for about 12 days before we found him a suitable heart, a 22-year-old guy who had had COVID. Although that example is very rare, fortunately, but one can say that in vast majority of individuals who have contracted COVID, they do not have any manifestations of heart problem, and the heart failure associated with COVID is very rare, less than 2%.
Sorry, were you able to save him, the 22-year-old?
Yes, he's gone home.
That's
he's
amazing.
Gone home to his
with a different heart.
Yes, with
Wow.
a different heart, and he has a 9-month-old daughter that he was delighted to see because he could not see the child while he was in the hospital for about 2 months. But he's gone home. He's doing well, and we expect full recovery.
That must feel like such a triumph for you.
It's incredible. It's incredible. It's the highest of the highs that one can get as a human being.
You know, we finish off here and I let you go, it's very intense what you do, right? I mean, you are at the top of your game, but I can only imagine it's an intense schedule. It's emotionally intense. You've talked a bit about that, working quite literally with life and death. How much longer do you want to be doing what you do?
That's a good question, because my wife keeps asking me the same thing, and sometimes I wonder yes, and I do think that there has to be a exit plan. I think that an integral component of that is to ensure that there is a succession plan, and other individuals who have acquired the skill set and the knowledge base to be able to continue the work. And I will do my very best to ensure that this continues, and because we have a commitment to patients. We have to ensure that this goes on with improved technology, improved knowledge base, and I will do my part as soon as I think that there is someone whom I feel comfortable to be able to assume the responsibilities. I think that you're absolutely right. I can think of a few other things that are less stressful than this.
You can write some bestsellers, you know. It's been a great honor and a true pleasure, and I hope we can continue the conversation. And I thank you so much for coming on, Roqe.
It's a pleasure to speak with you, Jian. And again, I commend you for what you and your colleagues do, because an integral component of a community is to have this level of knowledge that gets disseminated about who we are and what we do, and you and your group play a very important role in that process.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for all you do, and thanks again for coming on, and I'll let you get back to saving lives. Merci.
All right. You're welcome. Nice to speak with you. Take care now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Abbas Ardehali is the surgical director of UCLA's Heart-Lung and Heart-Lung Transplant programs, the William E. Connor Chair in Cardiothoracic Transplantation, and a professor of surgery and medicine at the UCLA School of Medicine. He joined us from Los Angeles today. I always like that version of the Roqe theme on the Sand Tour. That's Sina Bataille, the great musician hailing from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Dr. Abbas Ardehali, wow, the microphones are back on. Captain Reza, Groovy Shaya, the fabulous Keon. It almost seems redundant to say he's impressive. I so enjoyed that conversation. Fabulous Keon. Your thoughts?
You know, it makes me so proud to be Iranian, just from the fact that we have so much talent in the diaspora. It just every interview you do, I find myself surprised. Like, where were these people? People that I had never heard of. You know, and it also makes me sad in a way. You know, you think of all the brain drainage that came out of Iran, who had the plan to go back to their own country to better their own people. You know, their society for their own people, but after the revolution, they didn't have that option. So, I mean, it's a shame in a way. How great Iran could have been if we all stayed there.
In answer to your question, where have these people been? In the operating room, saving lives. It would be the answer, I think, in the case of Dr. Ardehali, and inventing the transplant, the breathing lung thing, which was
impressive.
Just fascinating to me. Captain Reza?
You know, my mother listens to the show. And I hope she
God love her.
I know.
Hi, Captain Reza's mom. Where is she?
She's in Iran right now, but she's coming here in August.
Beautiful.
For good. But I hope she doesn't listen to this interview, because it's going to remind her of the disappointment that I am, and the doctor that she wanted to be me to be. This person is the genuine example of everything that every Persian mother aspires for their children to become. So, could not have been more proud, honestly, than listening to Mr. Ardehali.
Yes,
Amazing, amazing.
Yes,
individual.
Shaya, and by the way, to Raza's mom, we feel your pain.
He's a captain, though.
But he's a captain. Is Dr. Abbas Ardehali a captain? I think not.
I think not.
Yeah. Shaya,
What can I say? I mean, we are.
what's your mother going to think? That's the most important.
Yeah, same as Reza. I mean, same as
Yeah.
Reza's mom. Yeah,
A bunch of artists.
yeah, but really, what can I say? I surprised because I kind of understood all the scientific part.
I think that's a credit to him.
Yes,
He
exactly.
was very accessible as a speaker. Yeah.
Exactly. He knows how to describe those things.
Yeah.
And it's great.
You know, I think that's one of the reasons why, not just why he's so impressive, but he's so likable, if I dare say that about a guest who's we've just finished the interview with, but is that he's very clear-minded. You really get and you also get a sense from him. As I was doing the interview, I was thinking, this is a guy who he knows who he is. He knows what he is considered important, and he's been very consistent about that for years. And that is, in and of itself, is so impressive and so likable when you come across someone who's, by the way, doing important and great work, but really has a sense of knowing what they think is important, knowing who they are, and knowing how they want to pay it forward or give back. It's great. It's great.
If I may say one more thing before we move on.
Is it related to your mother?
No, it's
Okay.
actually related to Roqe and what Mr. Ardehali said, Dr. Ardehali, who at the end he ended with saying Roqe is an important initiative, and it really is, bringing these individuals to light. And what Jian asked, he asked a very interesting question that caught my attention. He was like, what is the biggest challenge of the diaspora, do you think? And he said that camaraderie and that sense of support for one another. And I think that
Being unified. is what he said.
exactly,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
unification, and especially ending it with Roqe and this initiative being an important part. I think us as individuals will do our parts one at a time, and then collectively. We're always waiting for a big movement, a big action to be taken place so that we can join or be a part of it. But I think, for instance, and again, I'm not trying to tell people become a patron of Roqe or contribute to us, but this
Please tell them to do that.
I'm not going to force you, but
Right.
if we want change, we have to be change. We have to become part of a bigger movement. So if we claim that we want a better diaspora, if we claim that we want to better our community, it can start with contributing a small portion to important initiatives like Roqe. Become a patron.
Well,
and keep this moving.
I appreciate you saying that part, but I think we just have to have conversations with each other. We have to know each other. I mean, what's really nice 10 months into Roqe now is hearing from people who are connecting with other Iranians because of Roqe, saying, I didn't know she was in Vancouver. I went and met with her, and that connective tissue is something that really has been missing, especially in English.
That's right.
Like when Kian says, Dr. Abbas Ardehali, who knew, I mean, obviously he's very famous in his field, but for many Iranians around the world, we might not know who this is. Yes. Just like we don't know the great piano players and the great engineers and all of that necessarily. And so that's not that it should always be about celebration. We got to have the difficult conversations and talk about the issues, but that's a big deal for us to know each other and to recognize that connective tissue. Speaking of knowing Iranians from around the world, there's some in Australia, including the person behind the popular English I could hear her laughing already, English Farsi Instagram page. She is the Persian priestess of proverbs, the Australian sage of sayings, the wondrous woman of words, and our resident Roqe wordsmith for the last few weeks. She's joining us right now from Australia. She is Mona from Melbourne. Hello, Mona.
Hello, team.
How are you?
Honestly, I'm a bit sad. It's my last session with you guys. I'm honestly a little bit sad.
Well,
yeah.
no one told you to go and have more children. That was your choice.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I was already pregnant when you asked.
By the way, sorry, go ahead, Mona. I sensed you were going to say something nice, so please keep talking.
Oh, no. I'll let you go ahead.
Well, I'm not going to say something nice. I want to address Keon and Reza here because I have some news for you two.
Oh, no.
It seems that Mona and Shaya have been talking like in the back end, discussing proverbs and things like that. You know how each week it seems like Shaya has discovered the saying? Well, turns out I caught them red-handed. I was talking to Mona a little earlier, and she said, well, when I was talking to Shaya about the proverb, I'm like, wait a minute, what? Talking to Shaya. No wonder he seems like the genius who comes up with these things each week. Turns out he's been, back-channeling with Mona in Australia.
Yes, I have to admit that once it happened, but not always, only once. Yeah.
You got to come clean, Shaya.
We can't discredit his skills. He definitely has some skills.
So, Mona John, what are you bestowing upon our imaginations today?
All right. So, as for our last session, we've talked about a lot of animals. We've talked about geese and chickens and camels, and we're going right back around to the first session with camels. It's actually a saying, but has like proverbial sort of meanings behind it. And I've got a really interesting story that I've discovered that's linked in with it, and I thought I'd share that first, and then we can go into some concrete examples.
Okay, it's a saying today.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a Persian saying that my mom used to say all the time.
Okay.
And it's so interesting because I didn't know it had origins that are
and
so different to what I thought
it involves
would be.
Camels.
Yeah, well, a body part of the camel.
A body part of the camel.
Okay.
Oh, I love when we get into the camel talk on this show. It's
Shotor.
Yeah, Shotor. If it's an old British band or something we used to make high heels for you.
Is it really?
Well, I don't know. Well, it is an old British band. Yeah, the Camel.
Oh,
yeah,
I didn't know.
You'll have to listen to our Pink Floyd series, dear Mona.
Oh, yes, I should.
So, okay, you were going to tell us how this saying came about that your mom always uses.
Well, yes, that's right. The origin story, which I didn't know existed. And to be perfectly honest, this has been a really great learning curve for me because all of these parables are explained in Persian. So I really had to brush up on my Persian skills because, I've been learning myself. So here goes the story. So the parable, this parable is related to when a person is afflicted with a calamity and does not know that he'll provide new calamity for himself. So in the old days, there was a guy who had a hump on his back, and he always suffered from it, not only aesthetically, but due to the pain and burden of the said hump. One night, he woke up suddenly and thought it was morning, and he decided to go to the hammam. So back in the day, the hammam was a shared bath, so no one had their own bathrooms in their own home. So he packed up his things and he went. And as he approached this bathroom, he heard the sounds of singing and dancing and general merriment. Mm-hmm. He didn't really pay much attention to this as he entered this hammam.
The man with the hump. The man with the hump.
The man with the hump.
All right, yeah.
Yes. He doesn't have a name, unfortunately. Right. And so this man heard the singing and it became louder and louder, and still he continued to ignore it. And then when he entered the dressing room and took off his clothes and went into the sauna, he saw that people were dancing and singing. And he decided, okay, well, everyone's being so joyful, I might as well dance and sing along too. Forgetting all his worries and all his troubles, he participated in this little dance party in this hammam back in the day. Now, after some time, yes.
Naked dance party.
He was lofty potty.
Is the saying Burning Man? Because it sounds like a...
we invented Burning Man.
Sounds like a hippie retreat in the California desert. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So after some time, he looked down and noticed these people's legs were poisoned. His whole body started to tremble, and he realized that these people were in fact goblins.
Oh.
In his heart, he asked God to be his refuge and tried to act cool, pretending like nothing was wrong. A few minutes later, the goblins realized that the man was human, But because they'd spent so much joyful time with him and looked upon him as their friend, they didn't want any harm to beset him. And they actually decided to help him and remove that actual hump from his back, which was quite surprising.
Oh.
Now, this man was so happy, so overjoyed, his hump was gone. He thanked the goblins, and he was so grateful and returned home very joyful. The next day, he went to the markets and he saw his friend. And this friend actually also had a hump. And his friend was really surprised. He said, "Where's your hump, man? What happened?" And he approached him.
Wait, hang on a second.
Where's your hump, man?
Like a hump.
Where is this story from?
The Hunchback of Notre Dame, clearly. It doesn't actually have context in the story.
But is it a Persian story? Or no?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It has to be, because it was on a Persian website, and there's no, it's not documented anywhere. It's just like one of those sort of anecdotal stories that are passed down.
All right.
Yeah.
So where's your hump, man? Far out.
He's like,
Peace
"Where's
out,
your hump, man? Where is it? What are you doing?"
It's Haight Ashbury all of a sudden. Yeah, it's the 60s in San Francisco. Dude, where's your hump? Where's your hump?
And the man smiled and explained to him.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
You want to keep going? Then the man smiled and explained to him what happened last night. And this friend was inspired and decided a few nights later to go to the same hammam and see if these goblins can help me as well, because, I kind of don't want to hump either. So he proceeded to join the merriment and dancing. However, unfortunately, these goblins weren't feeling particularly generous that evening, and they saw the man and for some reason felt he was disingenuous. And instead of removing the hump, they actually gave him another hump. Oh. And this poor man was so upset, he couldn't do anything, and he said, "I was miserable, and now I've got another hump on my hump." So I'm not sure if this rings any bells for anyone, or if you've heard of this.
Well, we can't ask Shia because we know.
No,
I got it too.
You got it, Reza?
I got it.
What
is it?
Oh, wow.
Wait, hang on.
I have no clue.
What is hump? I'm trying to remember what
I
hump is.
totally got it, and I'm so glad I found the
No,
origin.
hang on. No, I remember hump because they would say the Hunchback of Notre Dame. They would say, is it
Goose?
Goose? Goose.
Yeah.
Goose?
Yeah.
بالای قوز.
That's right.
بالای قوز.
Goose, balay, goose.
Oh, goose balay, hump on top of a hump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So guza bala guz is like a problem upon a problem. So you've already started with a situation that's obviously not great, and then you add further burdens onto it. So in this instance, this man was intending to have a solution, but unfortunately, due to circumstances out of his control, it actually became worse. So it's guza bala guz. So
is it
something
goose,
that my mum
is
used
it
to say
goose
all the
balay
time.
goose or goose? How do you say it?
I would say قوز بالا قوز شد.
Goose
but-
balay goose should.
Yeah.
So you would use this when someone's causing more problems? You would say "Ruze bala ruz shod"? Is that correct?
Yes.
It's kind of like
Well-
it's like working with Keon.
Every day.
Every day is a goose balay goose should.
Literally.
Well, actually, I had a good Roqe example if you want me to
okay.
share.
Yes, please,
So
yeah.
the Roqe team, Jian is rearing to go for the next episode. He's in the studio.
Yes.
The interviewer's ready. Everything's ready to go. And he gets a call from Shia. Shia says that he's horizontal from all the lubia polo he eats, and today he can't make it to the studio. And
That's one
Jian's like,
goose.
"That's okay.
Right.
No worries. No problems. I stood on my team. We got this." And then his phone beeps. He gets a text from Kian. She's been surprised by the doctor and they're going on a romantic getaway. So she can't come to the studio. But Jian, forever the optimist, is still worried. Is still not worried because he's got his team. He's got Ponta the artist, Captain Reza, ready to roll. And a few minutes roll by and guess what? He gets a call from Reza. He's stuck in traffic and won't be able to make it because he's shopping for stylish clothes with his girlfriend. And then, next minute, guess who calls?
Ponta the artist, yeah.
Ponta the artist, and she's stuck in a snowstorm and can't make it to the studio. So we say "Bichar Jian, روز بالا روز داره."
Oh boy.
Boy.
It's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. But,
It does,
but
yeah,
it's which also has camel in it.
Yeah.
But except for that's
Yes.
like the ultimate ruse that, broke all the other ruses, kind of, right?
Yeah,
But-
it means
but
like
it's-
Jian's quit Roqe. Like that's it. He's done. He's done with you all.
Ruse bala ruse.
Would it be fair to say when it rains it pours, or Murphy's Law
Yeah.
is an equivalent of Roze Bala Roz?
I think you can combine all of them to sort of say the same thing.
Well, I'm so thrilled that you worked camels and camel culture into this this
I thought you'd like that.
this final episode for now of Mona from Melbourne with the Persian Proverb of the Week. Listen, we'll be in touch with you. We can't wait to hear the news of the new arrival, and we're excited for you. And hopefully everything will be safe and sound and happy. And we'll talk more soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Lovely to speak to you all again.
Thanks,
miss you,
dear Mona.
Bye, Mona.
Take care.
miss you. Bye-bye.
Khuda
Bye.
Hafiz.
Bye.
Bye.
That's Mona Kiani, Mona from Melbourne. She's being modest there when she says her Farsi isn't great, because that's part of the charm of her Instagram page, which you should check out. Inglisi Farsi. She posts words and the Persian translation of them. Inglisi Farsi on Instagram. Mona from Melbourne. All right. I know we got the letters of the week coming up. I just wanted to mention that at Roqe Media, you can go and become a patron of this program and support what we do. We really appreciate it. It is the way we'll stay alive. We have a BFF that I wanted to mention, depending on the category. You're a BFF or a rock star or an idol or a legend. Marlene Curry is a BFF, and I mentioned her because she's written in a few times to our show as well. Thank you very much, Marlene. And on that note, letters of the week.
I'm always so envious of anybody that can do the bishkan.
I know.
Could never
can't,
figure
I
it
can't.
out.
The beshkan being a weird way of snapping.
Your fingers.
That,
Pretty cool, I must admit.
That's secret club stuff. That's only Iranians understand that with each other.
Do that to a Canadian prisoner. Like,
It's
what are you doing?
What's wrong with your hand? Yeah.
So last week on episode 85, we had renowned Iranian-Dutch photographer, visual artist, video director, and filmmaker Mustafa Heravi on the show, who's officially become my all-time favorite Roqe guest.
Wow.
واقعاً.
Really?
And has since also become the inspiration for many people to enter the camel trading business. He's just the greatest. If you haven't had a chance to listen to him, please do.
It's a lot of fun, that
Yeah. So on YouTube, we have a Ray Sherwin wrote, "Such a good move to interview Iranian talents. Thank you."
Do you think Ray Sherwin is Iranian, or maybe he's just Ray Sherwin?
I never know.
Yeah. But you said it like so.
Ray
Ray
Sherwin.
Sherwin. His name is just like Ray Sherwin.
Ray Sherwin.
Doug Smith.
Speaking of favorite people, one of my favorite writers himself, Farhood SM, wrote to us again. What did he say?
Listen, if Farhood spent the amount of time he spends writing letters to us, becoming a patron for,
I know.
time is money, Farhood. So you're giving it away. Just give us, a little contribution. And what does Farhood have to say? He's always a good letter.
He says, "What a ride. I laughed, I cried, I lost 3 pounds. What an interesting cat. This interview represents the essence of the Roqe project. And once again, you've raised the bar. It's really a shame that some team members, Captain Reza, have bigger and better things to do.
That's right.
Welcome, Savi Roham. You get the honorary title of Major Savi Roham because the captain is on thin ice, swaying on the ledge, on the chopping block." And he's
Wow.
referring to the fact that Captain Reza decided to take a Monday off to go on a romantic Valentine's getaway. How
What
dare
does a
you?
guy gotta do to take a day off?
Farhood is fighting words. He's, I'm actually considering firing Reza after reading this letter. It's
And he keeps ignoring me. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Farhood, please
You're
write
not
about
worth mentioning,
Shaya.
Farhood.
Shaya might cry if you don't write about him, so please say something.
That's,
Please, for the love of God.
he's a great writer.
He is.
I love
yeah.
this Farhood. Yeah. He spells his name wrong though. It's Farhod, I think. He writes Farhood.
Cool. And then we have Atife Tabish writing to us from Halifax, Nova Scotia, on the east coast of Canada. She says, I'm a big fan of Mustafa Heravi and his artwork. The short movie It Was 5 O'Clock was the best ever. I love this interview. I had no idea about the cheese making and the camel story. I feel more connected with him now. I love his crazy visions and edits. We need more cool artists like him who not only cares about the art, he also cares about the people too.
Beautifully said. Atif. Nice letter.
That was lovely. And then we have Sadaf Dargahi wrote, what a character. Throughout the conversation, I was worried about him choking from laughing. It was a very interesting interview. After Aravan Rezai, this interview was very unexpected to hear what he's done. And I can't even guess what's coming up next in his life. Really.
Nor can he, by the sounds of it.
Yeah. As well.
Mustafa Heravi, by the way, if you didn't, it really was one of my favorite episodes as well.
Amazing.
If you didn't catch it, it was last Monday. It was the episode number 85 of Roqe.
Yes.
Would encourage you to check it out. It was very, very enjoyable.
Yeah.
What a character.
As well, last week on episode 86, we had pioneering Iranian-American food blogger Azita Hushiar on the show. So we have on Instagram username Samira Writes wrote to us saying, absolutely thoughtful. Loved listening to Azita. She's always charming and informative. Great questions and commentary here. Thanks for creating this space for the Iranian diaspora and its cousins.
Thank you, Samira.
And then, so on that same episode, Jian brought up a saying that his dear late father used to say, that no one's ever heard of, by the way. It's Khamos Qaranot.
Khamos Qaranot.
So, yeah, we had a few people write about that specific saying. We have a Abbas Marufi wrote, Khamos Qaranot sounds like a Hebrew saying, not Persian. Yes,
I don't think my father could speak Hebrew, but I'd be very impressed if that was a Hebrew saying. I would appreciate it.
And then we have Hessam Mubini wrote, Khamas Qaranat is Arabic that could have been used in Farsi too. It means fifth crane, which has something to do with the fifth sky, I believe. I think it's related to religious stories from Islam when Muhammad enters the fifth sky and he sees a lot of angels. I have no idea if that makes sense or not. Do not take my analysis seriously, as I'm not entirely sure. Yeah.
I think, actually, I spoke to my cousin who remembers my dad saying this. And Shaya, you had said that Hamas means 1/5, but my cousin was saying it means 5.
Yeah.
And so it actually is a celebratory. It's like you give the money to the beggar, and the beggar says 5. Make it 5 times that amount. Khamas Qaranot.
Yeah. Actually, I was wrong. I think khoms is 1/5 and khamas means 5th. Yeah.
And I think qaranat is a plural for qerun, which means qerun is it's like change, it's like nickel
Right.
in Farsi.
Yeah,
So
but but based on what Hessam says, it's actually khamas karanat, which is
Crane?
Crane.
That's what he's saying. Or
Hamas.
it's something related to
Crane.
the fifth sky. So yeah, I don't know too much about Islamic stories. So does anybody know?
By the way, you keep saying Islam, you don't want to say Islam?
Is Islam or Islam?
Islam.
I don't know. I grew up in the West.
I
We
know.
call it
This
Islam.
is the Idaho. Where were you born?
Des Moines,
Kentucky, Iowa. It's the
Okay.
Iowa girl coming up. And Islam, the Iranians in Islam. It's
Listen,
like, Keon, you're working on the show.
the
Us Iranians have a lot to say here.
Well, anyway, thanks, Hessam Mobini. I was hoping that there would be somebody who could unlock who had the golden key to this saying, Khamas Qaranot, but I do think that I want to use it in a celebratory form. So if somebody if next time Reza, Captain Reza, gets his film debuting at Sundance, the film festival, I'll be like, Hamas Kharanat, you know?
Yeah.
All right, we'll add that to our dictionary of celebratory words.
Listen, I've created words before. and names. The captain, yes.
Is it acceptable to say Hamas instead of Hamas Kharanat?
Not to me.
Oh, no. Okay. So
Also sounds
we
like
have
you're
to
saying
say
the name of a
You watch your
Palestinian
mouth,
political
Shia.
group.
All right, well, on that note, it's time for Letter of the Week.
Oh,
All right, this week's Letter of the Week goes to a Japes Fournier.
Oh.
That's on YouTube. I believe that's his real name. I don't know. I've never heard of a Japes.
or her.
Or her, yes,
Japes.
indeed. So Japes wrote to us saying, "Oh my God, I'm so happy I found you, man. This is amazing. Been missing you for years. Love that you're still doing the great, thoughtful intro essays. Thank you so much."
Nice.
very sweet.
Thank you, Japes. That's really fabulous.
Yeah, it is. Somebody
fabulous Jian.
has rediscovered you in a different form.
I
That's
appreciate
amazing.
that.
It's
I
very
appreciate
sweet.
that. Well worth the letter of the week. Thank you. Thank you to everybody who writing in. info@roqemedia.com or on any of our platforms. Thank you, Captain Reza, Groovy Shia, the fabulous Jian. See you Thursday. This is full time for Roqe for today. I've been mentioning it, but I'll mention it again. Our website, roqemedia.com, ROQE media.com is where you can find all of our episodes. You can see pictures of our fancy merchandise, figure out how to support us, see a list of all of our guests we've ever had. RoqeMedia.com. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Producer Susan, Ponta the artist, Thoughtful Nagin, the fabulous Jian, Savvy Roham, Aray Merdad, Master Muhammad, Chef Haas, Captain Reza, and Groovy Shia. Thank you to all of you out there supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you've not done so already. And you can find me on Instagram at jianghomeshi. In the meantime, have a good start to your week. And as ever, Mizun Bashi.